We talked yesterday, John, about, hey, buyers and sellers and the trade deadline's approaching, and it's still August 1st. So there's still quite a bit of time and a lot of games to happen between now and then. But for you, in your mind, when you watch teams and they're kind of hovering around 500 or they're a few games out, whatever their status is, when do you get to a point where you feel like you've got a pretty clear picture of whether a team should be a buyer or a seller?
I think at the latest, you should have at least a plan in place by the All-Star break, is my general rule of thumb. It used to be that after the draft, which in the good old days would have happened by now, you would have turned your attention to the trade market. Now the draft, of course, is at the All-Star game. It will be in Seattle this year, which is really exciting. But there's, to me, when you look at the big picture here as a front office, you've got to prepare the draft, and then you've got to prepare different scenarios as you evaluate other players and other organizations, whether buy, sell, or a little bit of both. I think Seattle is in a spot, and this to me is one of the more interesting clubs to talk about right now, because they're a little bit stuck relative to how well other teams have played in their division. And if I'm Seattle, and we've talked about this a bit before, but I would look at this deadline as the next big opportunity to reshape your team into an eventual World Series winner. If not the 2023 World Series, then the 2024 World Series. For example, and this is, I'm going to give you one idea to just mull over, because I would imagine, I'm not going to say this with certainty, but I would expect that in the walls of T-Mobile Park, they've probably kicked around ideas like this in the last several weeks or the last several months. This is the kind of thing that, presented with these types of circumstances, that I think Jerry Dipoto would think about. And it's a potential need-for-need major league type deal with a club like the St. Louis Cardinals. Now look at the Cardinals. They've got an abundance of young bats, and they don't all fit right now. The Mariners have an abundance of young pitching. And so that's where, take someone like Brendan Donovan, who is going to be potentially an all-star player this year, left-handed batter. He can move around the diamond. He's somewhat blocked positionally because they've got Arenado at third and they've got Goldschmidt at first. If the Cardinals call up the Mariners and say, listen, we'll listen on Donovan, 26 years old, multiple years of control, but we got to talk Gilbert or we got to talk Miller. What's that conversation like? And that to me is where, by any normal viewing of things, the Mariners would say, well, Gilbert he's on our team, he's probably off limits. Miller's on our team, he's off limits. But if the team calling you is offering you a player who's 26 who's arbitration eligible still for multiple years, not a free agent until 2029 or after 2028, that's the kind of thing that you talk about. And I think that's where the Mariners are. They're not, this is not some like 5-alarm fire that has to be fixed because the roster is a disaster. It's not that. But I think they need to do some renovations here, minor, but I think that's the kind of a deal that if I'm Jerry Dipoto, I am looking at my young pitching and sort of pricing it around the industry. Just how much do you like Logan Gilbert? How much do you like Bryce Miller? How much do you like George Kirby? I would have a hard time moving Kirby, but that's the kind of thing that when you're a good but not great team in this situation, that I believe you should at least consider.